Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Sunday Night hanging right here on Sunday nights. If you're new, please subscribe. If you're returning, welcome back. I'm Ben. We're hanging out. We're talking music. We're talking music gear. We're talking bands. We're talking locations. We're talking recent concerts, far away back in the day concerts, and all points and interests in between. So if you have a question or a comment for either Brother Charles, returning to the channel for the next chapter in the installment. I said originally we got to do a series, and he's like, whenever, brother. And okay, so this is the next installment. Always a pleasure to have you, man.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I love this community. You guys rock. Thanks for having me, Ben. This is very cool.
Every day, I swear. We've already got 38 people saying howdy in here. We've got Papa Blue, Hip Metalworks, Dave the Pious, Paulie Walnuts,
what's up, guys?
Thomas Santiago,
Right on, Thomas.
John Duchesne,
John, it's good to see you, brother.
Johnny Love, Tim Thomas, Randy Crooks,
Randy, right on, Randy.
Terry's 3Gs, Christopher Live Sawa, some guy named Fruitcake Tony. Neither of us know him.
Tony, it's good to see you, man.
Patrick Traits. Welcome.
Patrick. Nice to see you, bro.
Ferd Burfel.
Hey, what's up?
Reg Zeppelin. Of course, Dan in New Jersey. He wasn't going to miss this one.
Dan, what's going on, Dan?
Leo Safko.
Leo.
Jeff K.
Jeff, it's good to see you, bro.
Have it here.
Right on, Jeff.
Lawrence Cash out of Alaska. Hey, Guitar Man 45. Herb Fireside Studio.
Hey, bro.
Scott Brockway. Zach Thong.
Zach.
LRM Guitars, Jack Collins. Wow, everybody. Janice is here.
Janice, it's good to see you, sweetie.
Love Janice.
Yes.
Let's see. Let's get into the pre-gamers. Oh, wow. Yeah, just skipped. Okay. Yep. JP Page 2. Great to see him here. Gary's here. Guitar 1952. Billy Baloney. Joe Herdy 84. Eric Warrington, who won a t-shirt on here.
Nice. Yeah. I knew the name.
He won the Motley Crue t-shirt.
Right on, brother. Right on.
Martin Lemaire. Good to see you, man.
Very cool. Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah.
Very cool.
A lot of mayhem, Symmetry.
I haven't heard. Hey, Symmetry, what's going on, brother?
Yeah.
Good to see you.
And if I missed you, please say hello again.
Bunch of new names I've never heard before, Ben. A lot of names I have heard.
Growing every day, man. Growing every day.
Excellent. You've got one of the best channels, healthy, quality channels for this community on YouTube. That's why your channel's growing, and it's thank you for asking me on here. I'm honored to be on your show, man. This is a great group.
I love doing these shows because I never know where it's going to go. And, well, I kind of do, but I don't. You know what I mean? Like, we know what sport we're playing, and we know what ballpark we're in, but we have no idea who the players are or what the score is going to be. So
There you go.
You know, it's like we can go LA 80s. Okay. What genre of music? You know, because there was a lot of, as you know, there was a lot of scenes within a certain county, we'll say, you know, whether it be the Sunset Strip, depending on the day of the week, Sunset Strip. And then we had the whole other thing happening on over at the Baked Potato over in the valley, you know.
Yeah.
And crazy. And then, you know, all over.
You know, I love that we've been able to do a couple of these shows, because as I reflect back on the past shows, I look at things that I maybe could have expanded on, things that I maybe could have, you know what I mean? You've been doing
I know you know. Well, it's funny because I think that because I'm like, I wonder what we're going to talk about in a sense tonight. Yeah. But then I get excited because I'm like, I wonder what we are going to talk about, because we've told a lot of stories. Well, you've told stories. I've commented and thrown in where I can, let's be honest. And we've done that not only here, but also on Fruitcake Tony's channel, where, by the way, I'm going to be on this.
You're going to be on Saturday, and I can't wait.
Yeah. And again, completely different conversations.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I just love it, because yeah, you've done a few things in life, but you've been a lifelong passionate music fan. And
Yeah.
I say that to the point where you're the guy that reads the liner notes. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um,
I was
who played
listening
on what.
I was
Who.
listening in cool places, Ben. That's really pretty much how it, um, it ignited my want to be around it. I wasn't a musician at the time. I didn't start playing guitar until about 12 years ago. I could dabble at it a little bit, and I played with it some, but I, in no means would I consider myself a guitar player back in the 80s. I did
Which was
take,
an intimidating time to get into guitar playing in many ways,
well,
because the bar was pretty high amongst the people you're even hanging out with day to day. Like, nobody's just picking cowboy chords there,
I was
Charles.
put in my place once by Robin Crosby in a very loving way. He was a friend of mine,
Yeah.
and rest in peace, Robin. And we're in Gazzari's. I'm in one of the back dressing rooms, and I was noodling on a guitar, and he grabbed it from me, and we were very early in our friendship, and he played. I think I shared on the show. He played a Carry On My Wayward Son just flawlessly, not the whole song, but just a major section of it with the solo and everything. And he was always such a positive, genuine dude when he talked to me. He gave me a little guitar lesson once. I think I shared that with you.
Mm-hmm.
He was always very open, and I got to experience that, Ben. It was really nice. I look back at it, and I was very fortunate.
Yeah. Oh, in
Um,
many ways, it's funny because my opinion of Robin Crosby has changed since knowing you.
yeah,
Because all I
yeah,
have to go on is any interviews that I'd read while growing up, or the handful of sound, for lack of better, sound bites on YouTube, because they're
yeah,
not interviews, they're sound bites.
yeah,
And certain, and let's forget about the movie appearance, because half the people you talk to, that was all shtick for the movie, and the other half are going, no, that's Robin in a very sad place in life. And it's just like, I think it's more shtick. I'm just saying. I thought it was shtick
yeah.
because he was playing the excessive rock star part for this.
Mhm.
He saw it as a fake documentary, this way Spinal Tap was.
Yeah,
Whereas,
yeah.
you see that a bit in that movie.
He,
So, but like say you have opened up, not only myself but viewers, aside of Robin, the day-to-day stuff, which is, it's like no matter who big a celebrity is, Charles, if
yeah,
you spend enough time just sitting in a room with them, eventually they're going
yeah,
to say, "Hey, what's on TV?"
that's right.
Like it's
Right.
going to, once you get past all the hoopla and the schmoozing or whatever you want to call it, and it's just two dudes.
It's they're real people. They
Yeah.
struggle with stuff that I got to watch the crew come up. If you just looked at what the media said about Rat or Motley Crue,
Yep.
a lot of it people take it badly because they see people living in lavish excess lifestyles, and they say, well, look at them abusing what they have, and they judge them, and that's
Yep.
their right to do so. But that's a lot of what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
Um, the guys I talk about, I don't. If somebody was not a nice person, I won't throw them under a bus, but at the same time, I let you know I didn't get along with them,
Yeah.
for whatever reason it
Sure.
was. And you had to be pretty bad off to not get along with me. I was very friendly in
I,
those
I was
days.
gonna say I can't imagine you being a
Well,
hell of a like unless you're a complete 180 to the personality you are now. Which, sorry, it doesn't happen that way in life, folks. Like like sure we all get a little more mature, and you'd like to think you get smarter with age, because life
yeah,
experience. But
yeah,
unless you went through some major, major, major shift in life, Charles,
yeah, yeah.
sorry, I don't buy you as the a-hole.
No,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I don't.
yeah. No, I never was.
Hello to Blackjack
Um,
Guitar and Bragg Guitar Miller.
Hey guys, it's good to see you, man. Um, I surrounded myself with some pretty brutal individuals,
Mm-hmm.
um, as brutal as they come. Um, and it was not, it was not the most conducive lifestyle to be living for a long term. That's
Well, that's true.
but at the same time, you know, it was
You're in
really
your
interesting.
20s. Yeah, but
Say
you're
that
in your
again, Dan?
20s. Live a little, you know.
Well, yeah, I was pushed. I met a girl, and we got serious at a very early age. And it was while I was working at the whiskey. And I mean, we got so serious, we were engaged to be married. And it did end up fizzling out after about 4.5 years. But that 4.5 years were defining. It made, the choices that I made were
Right.
defined because of the relationship I was in. I had to, a relationship works two ways. There's things, I made choices that I thought were for the best, and they were. I took responsible paths in many ways.
Oh, sure.
When I took an opportunity to get out of that lifestyle.
Well, exactly. And we've talked both on and off air about that. And hello to Royal City Wreckers. LA can grind up a lot of people.
Yeah, that's an understatement, Ben. Actually, it'll take them as they come. The funny thing about working in the clubs is just about every single female working there, if they're a server of any kind, they are a model / actress / cocktail waitress. At least that's how it was defined in those days. It may not be politically correct now, but that's what.
Well, that would be the same as you could be a guitar player who happens to work security there.
Yeah.
Because you're not signed. You still need to eat and pay rent. So having a day job, and a lot of for as many guys that didn't have a day job and starved trying to make it, there was the guys that tried to hold some form of a day job and still starved to try to make it.
Guy, he had a girlfriend. They had a little apartment a mile or so away from the club, sort of nestled between Santa Monica and Sunset, kind of in that little region. And he was the doorman. His name was Brian. He wasn't a bouncer doorman. He was a guitar player, vocalist. He sang. He was in a cover band at the time, aspiring for more. And he was the door guy for a long time, 6-8 months. But, we were part of this little network family that, Mario Maglione was my boss. Louis, his nephew, was not only my friend, but he was my boss. It's interesting. I'll tell you guys, do you want to talk about the transformation, Ben, of the punk new wave scene?
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking about that because
true story first, because we can say true story after.
It's funny you mention that because recently they put up on YouTube there one of Sammy Hagar's, where he goes visits people, and he hung out at Tommy Lee's house. Right?
Yeah, I saw that.
Tommy still has that energy, right? And he was talking about back in the day, and I'm like, I've heard this from Charles. He's like literally he's telling stories of Sammy Hagar. I'm like, Charles was there because he's already told me this, like little instances, but how he was saying, like, because when they first arrived on the scene, we had that, because there was the Sunset Strip heyday, we'll say 60s into the 70s, because it really did carry through the Linda Ronstadt Eagles thing, which, right, because let's talk about the whole LA country scene in the 70s through the 80s. Okay. But, and a lot of those clubs, like say, depending on the day of the week, it was the genre of the day, you could have, same as in Toronto, Tuesdays would be punk night, Wednesdays metal night, Thursdays country, doesn't matter, CBGB's famous for that.
I miss CBGB.
I think part of that too. Wouldn't you agree, Charles? A lot of that is no matter what band you are, you want to play the whiskey, or you want to play Gazzari because you've heard of these clubs, and if you can get us in there, sure, we'll take a bit of a cut or whatever. We don't care because we want to play that room.
Yeah. So I had a so let's talk about the club thing and the music, the way it is sort of transformed for a little bit. When I got into the whiskey, it was the middle of the 80s, in 1980. So punk was huge.
Right.
Okay. It was still huge. It had morphed into something a little different than it was 3 or 4 years before, when bands like Black Flag were and the Damned were just, it was the British thing. Okay. And it had its own tone, and it was being eaten up by the American public. Bands were trying to emulate it. And I had a lot of friends when I was in high school 76, 77, 78, 79, 4-year high school in California, who were getting into that scene pretty big. I have a buddy named Johnny Cochran. He was in a band called Vermin. Now, they're not really a punk band. They're more of a thrash band.
Right.
But they came out of the punk scene. Okay.
Right. And the punk scene, which also spawned kind of the hardcore scene, which was, to an outsider, could be looked at the same, but no.
Yeah.
It's the same with it's the same as rock being and metal and all the different genres. Same thing with punk and hardcore, and then you have your new wave and straight edge and all these different things that it all morphed in just a matter of 3 to 4 years since, I don't know. Did we toss the coin? Did punk start in London or did it start with the Ramones in New York? Right? Some people tell you it's the Clash and the Sex Pistols, but I'm like, the Ramones were around first. Sorry.
And that's that's an argument that probably can't be won.
No.
But the influence that the English punk movement had on the punk movement was overwhelming. We could at least agree on that.
Oh, yeah. Period. I think it was mutually beneficial because part of that was the Ramones going over to England and playing with those other bands. MC5, exactly. Like there was elements there. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, who was the first metal band? Was it Black Sabbath? Was it Blue Cheer in North America? Which is basically like who turned up their amps the loudest first, type thing.
Oh, like, that's easy. Motorhead. Oh, just kidding. But anyway, it was.
Well, they did. It was
no, so as I'm in high school, I'm catching the vibe of all this. And I grew up very close to LA. I was in a beach suburb, about 25 miles from there, basically. And
LA adjacent, same thing.
Absolutely, real close.
Yeah.
In those days, it was just a skip and a jaunt, man. It was no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. If you're public transit away, you might as well live there, right?
Nowadays, it's unbelievably horrible.
There we go. Dave the Pious chimes in. I remember the Clash saying they're influenced by the Ramones.
Yeah.
And I always remember, as much as I love Joe Strummer, he was a hippie before he was a punk.
That's very true.
Playing with all kinds of effects pedals and the 101ers. Which I love that stuff.
But in their lifestyle and their opinions and the way they are, they're so punk, they had to be a punk band.
Well, that's the thing. Joe Strummer is Joe Strummer, regardless of the haircut and the guitar he's playing. And he saw the writing on the wall. He saw the hippie movement wasn't going anywhere. And he saw this movement moving. And he's like, so basically, if I play a little faster and turn up the gain, but still have the same message, it's like, because, much like the hippies were very political, punk was very political.
Isn't it? Yes. It's all it was. It was a political platform for defiance. And let's talk about that for a second, because that's interesting. Okay, in the early 80s, there was nothing like what we deal with now. So what avenues would bands, especially punk bands coming out of the 70s, there was no thrash at this time. We had punk. We didn't actually have hair metal yet. We had glam. It was a big thing. New York Dolls were a thing in the late 70s, or in the mid 70s, coming into the late 70s. Before your bands like Motley Crue and Rat and those kind of bands morphed in the early 80s into the 80, 81, 82, and so on. You had New Wave, which was. Would
you say that was almost a polished punk in a way? Like, I thought it was a little, I don't want to use the word sanitized, but like cleaned up, a little slicker, like it wasn't like the guitars were more in tune, a little cleaner, less gain.
Yeah.
And it was, okay, fine, because a lot of people would look at the Cars as being new wave, and stuff like that. And, it's like, okay. And that there was that change,
Yes. Well,
and I think part of that was a bit of a revival. The throwback thing, because by the 80s, they were, a lot of punk. Turn down the amps. Oh, now you're back to classic rock and roll, which spawned like the Go-Go's.
It was a lot of genres that did cross, and good music was good music.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's lots of bands that may have tried to come out one way. It was interesting, like bands like the hotels. Once a band would reach commercial success, they were sort of defined and then marketed, and it's a whole different ballgame.
Yep.
So when we're talking about club bands here, the club scene kind of went like this. In LA, you played either the Troubadour, the Starwood, or the Whiskey. You went from there, you went to a place similar to like a Perkins Palace. I'm so sorry, like the Country Club, Club, which would be a bigger venue. If you could do that, then the hype got big enough to where you transferred to like Perkins Palace.
Right.
And then you went from there to like the Santa Monica Civic. Now,
I was going to say, yeah, and you had a handful of civic centers in the area too that would have that intermediate space.
And within the scope of all that,
we can't do the hockey arena, but we need something bigger than the clubs. Where is that? And that would be those civic centers.
Exactly. Well, earlier we were talking about like the way that bands got the word out about them. Bands were underground. Punk was an underground scene. So how did people find out? Well, if you didn't stick a note in somebody's locker in high school, what are you going to do? Call them?
Yeah, you didn't have some suits bankrolling your promotion.
I'll tell you how in LA it was done, in all of California. California is a school town, a lot of colleges, lots and lots of colleges. Pasadena Civic College, okay? Right. For just as an example, Van Halen, lots of bands, there's hundreds and hundreds of bands over the years who got their start playing to college kids. And the network in the colleges, it was sort of an underground river of where the kids could talk about with one another under the radar.
Yep.
And that's how it worked.
Yep.
Period. That's how it worked. And so I had a friend, Johnny, I was talking about him, John Cochran. He was a lead guitar player in a band called Vermin. They actually opened for Slayer in '82 on a rainy Monday night. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let me back up just a little bit. They go through the colleges, and the network would be there for all the genres of music. It wasn't just one. It was everything.
Yep.
But there's something that occurred that I noticed, and you guys think about it. We'll talk about it another time, or we'll talk it to death now.
No, there's something that I have a question on, because when you mentioned the colleges, you had the college papers, you had music reviews.
Yes.
And again,
the network.
Yeah, and you could be checking out a bluegrass band, you could be checking out a punk band, it could be a marching band. You don't know because you are covering music.
Yes. Well, remember Rodney Bingenheimer. Okay, he's a name. He
and hello to all joining in with us. We got
responsible for the success, period, of both of metal, because he had an underground KMET. He was in tune with the college networks, and so both punk and metal. And I'm going to say punk and metal like it's they came out of each other, and it was interesting.
It's like the poor kids wearing jeans and high top sneakers.
Well,
and
Jeff Hanneman is pretty well known as a thrash guitar god. Can we agree on that? Slayer is as thrash as it gets, and as badass a band as it gets. But Jeff Hanneman has roots that go deep into punk. His friends were punks in those days. He had massively tight ties, just like Lemmy did with the punk scene.
Yep.
And in the beginning, the clubs embraced. And when I say the clubs, I'm talking about, here's what happened. The club scenes in Los Angeles, just like everywhere else in the world, are driven by one thing: revenue.
Yep.
If you're a band and you can sell that place out, money talks. And that's how it was. And so they brought bands in that could sell, period. That's all they cared about. So when music had a specific genre that was coming forth, new wave, punk in the 70s, let's call it, the clubs opened up to that type of music, and clubs popped up everywhere. There was a flipping club. I was only there like once or twice in my life, but it was very popular for punk bands. It was a showcase for punk bands called the Waters Club. That's what it was called. And it was an interesting club because when you came in, and like normally you come in the bar, you go through the bar, boom, you come in, you sit down, and then the stage, or you stand there on the stage. But at the Waters Club, you come in and you go through, you walk down, and you literally walk up, and the bar is like this horseshoe that's built right in front of the stage. And so the bar is the busiest place all night. It's packed, but it takes the band's personal, the personal relation they have with the fan watching the show. It kind of pulls them back, and it's kind of impersonal. It's kind of a weird place, but it was great for punk shows because the punk shows were really violent. And when I say guys, the biggest problem with the genre of punk music was not the fact that it was rebellious or the message. The message was shocking to the middle, the moral majority, but who cares, right? That wasn't the point. It was the violence. I can tell you stories that would shock you about rock shows, punk shows that occurred at the Whiskey, and this is in the early 80s. It was worse in the late 70s. I worked with guys who told me stories, and I would look at them and say, God, I hope that never happens again.
Y'all kind of popular, really embraced the slam dancing on the West Coast, Charles.
There were punks that climbed and got onto the fire escape and climbed onto the roof of the Whiskey and had brick and were throwing them at the police. Okay? Didn't end well. Did not end well.
Yeah, that was the element of the punk scene that was always bad, because the punk scene, thank God, they were rooted out by, let's say, early to mid 80s. That because it just wasn't tolerated. And then, being that bit younger than you, by the time I got into, because there's a punk by that point through the 80s, there was a punk scene in every town. If there was an animal building you could rent out, which would be your Elks Lodge, Moose Lodge, whatever, you could rent it out, do your own DIY punk show, because we had learned from those bands in the 70s how to do it. Then it was, dude, all inclusive. It's like the way they would describe a hippie gathering was what the punk scene was. Like, it was all inclusive, no judgment, at most to be like, are you wearing that shirt ironically? And if you're asked that question, you just say, yes. That's about it.
Absolutely.
But I know there was that side of it in the original punk scene. And then that's why hardcore did their thing, because they were all straight edge. We don't do drugs. We don't drink at all. We don't put up with bullshit, which was weird being called hardcore. You'd think that's where that element went, but no, because they're just, we don't want to be with the druggy punks and the drunk punks.
Well, it's interesting because what did happen at the end of the 70s. So I get into the club. It's the middle of 1980 now. Hair metal is now almost a thing. It wasn't necessarily called hair metal. It was called hard rock, heavy metal. It wasn't hair metal, and it wasn't called that at the time, but that's what it essentially became.
But the media called it in the late 80s by the time the scene was already dead locally.
Thank you.
Because let's be honest, by the time I'm hearing about it in small town Ontario, it's already been dead for 8 months in LA.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people have a preconceived notion of how it all went down. And to be perfectly honest, hair metal had a very small window.
Yep.
When you talk about the early 80s, Motley Crue, Rat, Quiet Riot, it was over 3-4 years, 5 years.
I was going to say 5 years.
And it was overlapped. In 82, at the end of 82, Metallica did their first show. All right. And that was the beginning of the change that turned into
the ocean. The next wave is behind it as one's hitting the shore and the other one's already started.
But at the same time that's going on, punk was still a thing, dude. Yep. And it was big. It was huge. Yep. And back to the Hanneman Lemmy. Okay. What happened? This is what happened. Around 1985. It was 84. I'm within a year, you guys. Okay. I'm within a year. I probably should have thought this through a little more. 84, 85.
I'm not going to bring up the fact that we're talking basically 40 years ago, Charles.
Yeah.
And like we say, you
months.
survived it. You survived it, Charles. So
Well,
everyone in the chat, I notice this every time you come on, they're all like, "I can't believe his memory." I'm like, dude, I can't even remember last week. I can't believe Charles remembers this stuff, but it imprinted.
I appreciate that. Okay, so in '82, the beginning of '82 was when I was standing in the whiskey at the time clock, and I was looking at the little roster of bands coming up, and this guy walked up next to me, and he introduced himself. He said, "Hey, my name's James," and he shakes my hand. He says, "I saw you backstage last week. I just submitted my tape upstairs. We're really hoping they put us on. It's nice to meet you." And it was James Hetfield. Okay, and so Metallica was now trying to become a thing. Over the next 6 months, I watched him and Lars try to poach thank you, Burton. Yep. And they were successful. It took more than 6 months. It was still
still love the balls on Cliff Burton. Yeah, I'll join the band, but you got to move out of LA.
See, a lot of people may not know this. This is actually a great trivia question. The first show was at a place called Radio City, and I think it's Anaheim, California. Anaheim, I believe. And that's where Metallica played their first show. Their first show, James Hetfield didn't even play guitar. He was a vocalist.
Right.
Dave Mustaine was a guitar player. And I'm so sorry. I can't think of the other guy's name, the bass player, the guy before.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
Super nice guy. He bowed out gracefully because he had heard Cliff play, and he was like, "I get it," type thing. But he was okay from what I've read of accounts. Like, he wasn't great, but he was okay.
I just hate that I can't remember his name. I try to do justice, and I'm so sorry. It'll come to me though. But anyway, and I met him. He was a great guy. These guys were great guys.
He was a super nice guy.
They were playing out of really punky bands. Okay, These bands were punky. Okay, but they were trying to be harder than each next one. So they were trying to
like, LOL, nobody remembers us bass players.
Well, they were trying to play a little faster than one another. And so I'm listening to the music, and bands like Motorhead are now a thing, hard and fast.
Yep.
Playing many times in excess of 180 to 190 beats a minute. Yep. Thrash metal can go up to 200, even above beats per minute. So I'm listening to metal.
Was it Ron McGovney?
I believe so. Yeah, that's him. Thank you. Thanks. Yes. McCovney.
Quentin James, ladies and gentlemen. Quentin James.
Quentin James, you absolutely rock, brother. It's good to see you, man.
Yeah. Hey, D-Mac.
I love Quentin. Where was I, Ben? It's all Quentin Stam's fault.
A lot of punk influence, which, let's be honest, a lot of these bands, by the time you hear them all polished studio album that we get, a lot of those bands sounded very punky before, like, even when they were recording that, it would have sounded punky before the, all the slicksters and the polishing. Yeah. I remember first show we did together, talking Motley Crue's first album. I'm like, that's a punk album. And you're like,
you know what?
Yeah.
It is like a punk
Livewire. I'm sorry, Livewire is a fucking punk song.
It's a punk song. It's just played. It's not necessarily played faster. It's
got a breakdown.
Distorted differently.
Yeah.
It's a high gain tone. It's distorted differently. It's got a vocalist who's singing vocals that are song oriented. He's not screaming at you. He's actually singing
to you with a better vocalist.
Well, and guys, I'm going to say this: Vince Neil, when he was in his prime, God, he was so charismatic. He was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. God, I hate to jump around. Let me get out for them and get back on the punk thing.
Shush, Doug.
Doug, what's going on, bro?
Yes, and Billy Baloney, yes. Really early Iron Maiden was kind of punky.
Let's talk about that.
Because that was part of the new wave of British heavy metal where we had that's where the speed element was coming in.
They called it BHM. BHM is the term that the guitar players and musicians were using. And here's what was going on. The British invasion had occurred. Finally, we have bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. I'm just going to use them as an example.
Well, yeah.
I could use a band
the two that rose to the height out of that.
Let's use Judas Priest and Iron Maiden as an example. Guitar players specifically, and bass players, because the bass players had to keep up with the same time as the guitar players, were developing their right hand in a guitar player way. All right.
Yeah.
And they were learning to pedal tone,
Little Keith.
high rate. And what it did was it started to change the ability in guitar players, so that when 81, 82 came around, thrash became a thing because they had the ability to do it, because no one had done it that way previous. Within 3 or 4 years, it took that time to develop. But that's what I noticed on the Sunset Strip musically from the punk scene.
Mm-hmm.
The other problem, which was a huge problem,
because can we thank and or blame the punk scene, where as a bass player, all of a sudden it's like, wait, I don't have to actually play the bass. I can just ride the root. Like, yeah, you can just ride the root. Because even that the Ardens and the Judas Priests, as much as the bass players are riding the roots, they are doing other stuff in there too, doing quote unquote bass runs, stuff like, playing melodically, as opposed to with punk, you just ride that root.
Well, let's talk about Judas Priest and Iron Maiden first. The early Judas Priest, I'm talking about the stuff. Okay, and another thing that these guys were doing, they couldn't get this stuff on the shelf. They couldn't go down to Licorice Pizza and get it unless they went to the import bin. European imports were the thing. Scorpions, Maiden, Priest, all European import. And it was driving the desire to gain the ability with the American guitar players in LA. And I had a couple of friends who were doing it, and that's how I know that this is a thing. Mm-hmm. My friend John, the minute he got into, I'll tell you the song, Judas Priest, Exciter, off of Stained Class, I believe it is. I think it's Stained Class, one of their early albums. We're talking early 80s, very early 80s, 81, I believe it is. I think it is. And it was in support of I'm trying to think of the album it was in support of too. They did a tour then. And so the guitar in that song is at a speed that is thrash metal speed, the speed with the right hand. Mm-hmm. And what they did, at least something that I noticed, was both Priest and Maiden, when they began to develop a commercial fan base and to get radio play, things of that nature, they slowed down slightly. They changed the driving viciousness of their music, didn't take it away completely. They kept it because that's what people liked.
What's up, Tom?
They made it a little more acceptable for more of a mainstream. And then they, in Maiden's case, Bruce Dickinson comes in and establishes his flair on it, which, is what we all learn to love. But there's still guys who are pre-Dickinson. They like it the original way. Why? Because it was so much more vicious and hard driving and kind of punk. Mm-hmm. That's what the thing was. At least when I was in high school, the guys who wanted to play punk may not have necessarily been the most accomplished or proficient musicians, but they wanted to rock hard. And so they use things like volume and speed and attitude.
Aggression.
Thank you. And but here's what happened. This is what happened, and it's really sad. And I watched it happen. The Waters Club and clubs like Radio City, who would showcase, and also Godzilla's in the Valley. They were known as punk places, punk venues. Mm-hmm. Gazzari's for a long time would play punk, but then they stopped. Bill, I can remember Bill doing a rant. He just wanted pretty boys. And by the time 84, 85 came around and Warrant was the thing, and Poison, there were bands that were so fed up with the violence that had occurred and was occurring over that 3 to 4 year period coming into the 80s. And guys, it was horrible. Okay. It was the most wonderful time in music to be there. It was very interesting, but it had moments that were just flat horrific. And a lot of it, the only way the venues were getting destroyed, there was damage being done.
Oh,
The
yeah.
fans of that music were literally burning the candle at both ends. And it all happened. It came to a head around 84, the Troubadour, which was known to allow thrash bands to play there,
Right.
punk bands to play there. And remember, both those bands have cross genres. You could see a lot of fans who would be at a, let's say, a Plasmatic show, and then they'll show up over here to see Slayer all the time. That happened. Well, those groups started to clash. And it wasn't necessarily the Plasmatic Slayer, but there was a band. Okay, you guys Google this when you get a chance. There's a band from the 80s that epitomized everything that was bad about hair metal and the hard rock scene at the time, and they were called No Sugar.
Okay.
And my buddy John's band actually played, and I wasn't at this show. I'm telling a story he told me. And he told me that, and it was sold out. It was a sold out kind of a gig. Thrash was big. They could bring a lot of people into these shows, and that's why venues were popping up everywhere. I mean, everywhere, all over, Pasadena, Anaheim, the Valley. If a place had the ability to show bands, they could make money, and they did. It was a trend. But the violence was catching up. And at this show I was just talking about at the Troubadour, that was it. The Troubadour had enough. They canceled. And the Starwood did the same. And the Whiskey A Go-Go started to do the same.
And that's kind of 3 crown jewel venues right there.
Whiskey closed in the mid-'80s, late 80s for renovation. They were closed for a lengthy little period of time. And so they kind of unplugged themselves from a scene almost by design. They took themselves out of an equation that was like in just discombobulating. Okay.
Right.
And so what they did was this, and this is what Metallica did. Okay. Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax could no longer play at the Troubadour simply because the fans that were coming to the show were rubbing the venues the wrong way. And it was fan driven. It had nothing to do with the bands. It wasn't the band's fault, but they were getting fed up with the fans. And so, and I watched it happen. Okay. I just watched it happen. And so here comes Janie Lane. Here comes Warrant. Here comes Poison. Okay. Metallica, they go to San Francisco. They head up north with every other metal band because in San Francisco, they embraced it. Embraced it, and it changed and shifted the entire music scene in LA. It was night and day. It completely changed it, and then grunge hit in the 90s, and so it was weird how the tail end of that all changed. But they essentially, this is what they did: they got punk out of LA. They sent it out of LA and made it impossible.
Hey, Tinkerbell.
Hey, Tinkerbell, how are you? They made it impossible for them to perform. And the music was changing again. There were still, there was a, I don't want to say a resurgence of hair metal. It was a change. It was still hair metal. I would call Warrant and Poison hair metal. I'm sorry, that's what they are. And
that's the thing. Yeah, like by the time the hair metal was on the scene. Well, that first wave of bands were well out of the clubs by then. And that's what I was curious, because I'm thinking to myself, like who was kind of the last one in the door that actually broke out of there? Because there was a handful of bands that broke, let's say by 88, 89. But I know a lot of music fans were just like, it's another, I already heard this band 4 times. Like, I don't need to hear another Warrant or, whatever. So I'm thinking a lot of those bands, they ended up probably becoming some form of grunge alternative. But on the other hand, I don't know, because then you almost have like the Stone Temple Pilots thing happening.
Yes.
At the same time, Warrant is getting big. What's what's that next wave in behind them? Well, that's Stone Temple Pilots.
Thank you. Scott
So
Weiland was the greatest thing.
that would be what
grunge
would have
anyway.
been happening in the clubs at that time.
I'm a big Weiland fan. I like a lot of grunge. A lot of grunge was cool for me. I enjoy it. I still to this day.
I hate that they get looped in with grunge because
thank
you. Really,
that, but that's
honestly, really, there's only one actual grunge band that still gets any kind of play, and that's Nirvana.
Yeah.
The rest of them were not grunge. Pearl Jam, not grunge.
Yeah.
Soundgarden, not grunge.
It's funny how you get slipped into a genre and it can be something simply as a guitar.
Alternative rock, yes.
You know,
alternative, yes. Grunge, no.
Yeah.
Mudhoney, grunge.
You know, there were clubs. The Country Club was really great. The Waters Club was awesome. I told you about that. There was another place called Alpine Village, which was quite literally like a little amusement, not an amusement park. It was like a German-themed Alpine Swiss village.
Dennis Jr. not grunge because they started in the mid-'80s.
You come, they have like a craft shop and curio shops, and they sold like merch and stuff. But they had a beer garden. Okay, they had an epic beer garden with like German beers.
Nice.
It's really, really cool. And they opened it up for sure. They opened up for shows. And so like my buddy John's band Vermin, they played there. Everybody played Alpine Village. That's the playing of Alpine Village is something you had to be there. That is something old school that is never going to come back. Cool. And a lot of guys, if somebody from the LA area who back in the day hears this, they'll be like, yeah. And you got to have some of the best beer as well as, rock your show or whatever. It was really cool. There are bands like A La Carte and Stormer. But No Sugar was the band, guys. So Google No Sugar. They had like candy stripes on their mic stands. They were they showed up at this one venue at the Trube, and the crowds clashed. The Vermin crowd and the No Sugar crowd literally were like hating each other, and violence broke out, and it was a defining moment in LA for music. My friend
with the correct answer. Keith Campbell had asked, define alternative. I was going to say alternative to mainstream, essentially, also known as college rock at that time, which was
interesting. College rock, the colleges
to like not. Yeah, we're talking independent label, maybe a minor offshoot of a major label. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, like how Atlantic had various subsidiary labels. You'd be on one of those, maybe. Maybe. But yeah, you wouldn't have mainstream radio play. You wouldn't have, you're not getting record signings in stores. You're not doing any of that stuff. It's all DIY. That's back to DIY. The difference is there was a radio network. Is that because you played the college radio stations, because you had students programming the music, were playing your stuff, which would carry over to the punk stuff as well. And a lot of rock bands, punk bands, because it did encompass various, let's say six different things, everything from punk through to your singer-songwriter, let's call it alt country stuff, like for lack of a better term. You know what I'm talking about, Charles, that roots rock stuff.
Because colleges are
platforms
for the arts. And so any music is considered okay in the college. One may just not be as popular as another, but they're all there and they're all encouraged. They always have been, Van Halen got their start playing to college crowds. The backyard parties they were playing were many times college students and their parents.
High school dances. You know, how many bands played high school dances back in the day? Boner Jam says, time for pumpkin beer yet? What's good, everyone? Hope everyone's prepping for Halloween season. Oh, I am. It'll be here soon.
I missed a shout out to you, Boner, in a show the other day. I didn't even notice you were there, bro. I'm so sorry. It's good seeing you. It is very good seeing you, man.
But yeah, I remember and part of that thing was college rock or alternative was the way it spread outside of the colleges was for those of you that had an older sibling, when they came home in the summertime, you who are still in high school are like, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
Like I got exposed to it I didn't have an older sibling, but people I worked with at my family's restaurant that were 3-4 years older than me went
Yeah.
over to a house party. And I remember going through the record collection, and let's say there was 150 cassettes and LPs, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
I recognized 3 albums. And my buddy's roommate had a Motorhead album, a Ramones album, and a Slayer album. And the rest of the 150, I had never heard of them.
That
And
just goes to show you how much music there is out there.
yeah. And I was just like, all of a sudden, and I'm walking in probably wearing a Poison t-shirt, going, hey guys, what's up? At 16, and this is in 1991. And I was all like hearing Dinosaur Jr. for the first time. And, and everybody, he's like, I remember Frank, I still love him to this day because everything he compared to sounded like old Doughboys or what the fuck, Lou Barlow's band.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what? Like Fugazi for the first time and shit. Like I was like, I've never heard anything like this.
Yeah.
It was Discord was popular at that time, and I was just like, it's like distorted jazz. So where's the beat? I couldn't understand it. I was lost.
That is so cool.
Yeah, man. Billy. Well, you worked in a record shop. Billy Baloney worked in a record shop for like 20 years. So I could just imagine, if it was a cool record shop.
It's a crash course in history. That's a crash course. You learn all the artists and who's there from A to Z. Very cool, man. Very cool.
Patrick says, I didn't like Dinosaur Jr. the first time I heard them. The interesting thing is my dad, who, I could play him anything and he hated it, Charles. I put on some Dinosaur Jr. and he was actually like, well, he's trying. I can hear the emotion and what he was trying to do. He's like, he just skipped over what would a lot of people say terrible playing and singing, and I was just like, wow, okay, because I was trying to get a rise out of you, But no, he saw it for what it was. I mean, then I get it because, growing up, like, what's Bob Dylan in many ways, or Neil Young in many ways, Neil Young's admitted he plays slightly out of tune because it sounds better, in his opinion. Like, okay, your opinion, Neil,
My dad hated the music I started listening to. I remember one day I was sitting in a chair and I had the Ted Nugent Cat Scratch Fever album. I was reading the cover. I had it opened up and I had Ted out and I felt this presence behind me. I look at my dad with a look you never want to see your parents have in your face. Was just looking at me like, I've lost the boy. He's gone. Yeah. And I think he was right. But that's beside the point. It's funny how music, molds us and changes us and how we sort of gravitate to this genre or that genre. That's the one thing that was cool about working in the club.
Hey, Randy?
I say club, the clubs. I've been in a lot of clubs. I did work for West for about 4.5 years. So I've been in every venue in California at least once, it seems.
And I'm going to say you worked for some, I'm going to say legendary people on the club level, and not because of what they owned and operated, what have you, but the fact that, I've met a few club owners over the years, Charles, and most of them are real jerks that's about the nicest word I could call them. You know what I mean? And these guys, first of all, they weren't there for 6 months and then gone in the middle of the night. It wasn't, just build it up and flip it situation. Yeah. They took care of their employees. Their employees were glad to take care of them. I could tell that from you, as well as seeing documentaries regarding the Sunset Strip and how bands, often you'll see in documented bands will look fondly at playing a venue, but they'll talk about, management were dicks or something like this, or there was some kind of hassle. You never heard about that with the guys you worked with or for.
I was fortunate enough to work, what I consider to be, there were a couple of real big, the Starwood was in the 70s, what I considered the whiskey to be in the 80s. And Not that it wasn't great in the early 80s. I had friends. In fact, you talk about people who were club owners who were this and that. There was a real rocky patch. I'm going to tell you guys a Motley Crue story, and it actually involves a manager. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to come on here and like badmouth and tell bad stories about somebody who was a dick or whatever. They're not here to defend themselves. But at the same time, I'm going to tell a story, and I'm going to tell a story about a manager that I did not get along with in any way, shape, or form. We butt heads constantly.
Charles, a lot of the suits were dicks back in the day.
He
and they
fired me
today,
once, and Mario Maglione overrid his power, wrote him, and I was back the next day. That in itself messed him up. He didn't like that. So he gave me nothing but crap. I'm going to tell you guys a story, and I'm going to overshadow some of the bad things that he did, but I just want you to understand that it was hard getting along with this man. The entire club took a downturn as far as morale in the 6 to 8 months that this man was working there. A manager by the name of Paul Dancer was the guy who actually hired me. And he was a nice young kid. I'm not sure what the reason was that he left.
Trying to Shane, yes, coked out dicks. That's the suits, yes, coked out dicks. Because let's be honest, it was LA in the 80s. There was a handful. I heard there's a few of them loitering around town, Charles. You may have witnessed one across the room once. I'm just saying.
I'll say this, and I don't, you guys know, I don't talk about the drugs, and I don't talk about the
you don't need to. Everyone else has.
But you guys, if you were there, it's in every single thing that we did. It was there. Okay, it was an absolute prevalent. If you didn't do it and you were in that environment, you were the oddity in those days on the strip. Okay, so when I tell you guys stories, just keep it in mind that was going on constantly. You can't stay up for 3 days at a time if you don't do something to enhance your ability. So that being said,
Guitar Man 45 goes, well, that white powder was part of the fun.
Yes.
And that's coming out of the Detroit scene.
There's I don't talk about it for a lot of reasons. Some of us out there are in recovery. Some of us are in this and that. And so for me to tell stories like that is just inappropriate.
I've always said, Charles, there's a time and a place.
Thank you.
For everything in life. And like you said, there's only one way to stay awake for 3 days straight. So you do what you got to do.
Well, I tell Ben stories, and I tell Fruitcake Tony and some of my other friends backstage stories from time to time, and they're just not appropriate for the show.
Yeah, that's the pay-per-view Charles Greene show, which is not available yet.
But we're working on that. I want to talk about a Motley Crue night, and I'm going to tell you guys a story about something that occurred. This is 82 now. We're talking just a couple of months. Just 1 month into 82, and I was only in the club until around March. So this is a couple of months before I actually left working at the Whiskey full time. Okay. I was back a little here and there because I still worked for West. And in the future, I'll tell you guys some stories about when I came back to the Whiskey to work with West on some shows.
Which would be interesting because the way some things change and some things stay the same, I imagine.
I kept friends. It's funny. I was that, and just to say this, I was on the phone about 15 years ago with Louis, and within the first 5, and I'm talking about Louis, he inherited Mario's legacy. Okay. And within 5 to 7 minutes of talking, the subject of Red Keller came up, and Red Keller's the manager that I didn't get along with. He was an actor. He was in a movie called American Hot Wax. I've mentioned it on this show. The movie is fantastic. Floyd Matrix directed it. A lot of friends of mine, people who became friends of mine in Hollywood, were extras in the movie, models / actresses / waitresses. A lot of them are in it. It's just a wonderful movie. But this guy, Red, was the manager. Mario put him in this position out of necessity. He was available. They stuck him in it, and he was hard to work with. Okay. He came in there and he ruled the place, ruled it with intimidation was his main thing. He was old school. He was from New York, Brooklyn, and And he just had a way about him that, I have a lot of friends from New York and Brooklyn, and they don't act like this guy. All right. They just don't. He came in there and he rubbed everyone the wrong way. He was inappropriate. In fact, when I got fired, the reason I got fired was he was inappropriate with a waitress, and he upset me. But anyway, we had been with him for about a month in the club, and we had been able to sort of acclimate to his rules and his ways. And one of his new things was this.
Okay.
When a night was supposed to happen, every single individual who comes into that club, band, manager, employee, it didn't matter. They all had to come through the front door and be accounted for in some fashion. Okay. And there wasn't like there was some big need for him to implement that policy. He was just, that was his way of controlling. It was a control thing. Because we had been doing shows for a year prior to that, and no problem, no problem. 450, 500 people, no problems at all. Except for, when things jumped off and we had those kind of problems. But
that's generally not, I'm guessing 9 times out of, or more than that, more than 9 times out of 10, any problem is not venue route caused or staff caused. 99% of the time it's patron caused.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe the band might incite something once in a while. Like, it could be something like a back and forth that gets out of hand.
I've seen that share of band drama. Yeah, you got that right. But for the most part, it's a patron thing, and that's really the problems with public bars and restaurants.
Thanks,
anyway, it's a Motley Crue night. The club they're scheduled 2 sold out shows, and Motley Crue is quite literally the headliner, and there is no opening act. And they were just a couple of months away from they'd already been selling out the country club. They'd already been played every major club in LA, and a little beyond that. They had gotten around, Pasadena, Anaheim. They'd gotten
so they'd be pretty much the LA club band at this point.
They were the kings of the Whiskey A Go-Go. Okay. They were the new Van Halen of the Whiskey A Go-Go. Quite literally, the numbers were identical. There were 250, 300 people on the streets. It was like a zoo. It was a madhouse. Okay. And so we're here on show night. I show up, get my dinner. I'm sitting there eating my dinner with all my buddies and, all my friends. And Red comes up and he reiterates his rant while we're eating dinner that he wanted to make sure that everyone they were going to get a ticket stub, and they're going to get a hand stamp on the back of their left hand. And everyone, okay, Red, no problem. We had all.
Just going to interrupt for a sec. We do want to give Boner Jams a shout out because he has his own show now. Well, he's got 25% of a show now. So everyone should check out the Under the Bus Network.
It's a good show, you guys. It's a great show. It's a
great show.
He's got great guys on there, and you got Jay Hannon on there, man.
Maybe Terry can throw a link to the channel in the chat here.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yes. So we've got Crew's playing. You're trying to eat, and he shows up.
Yeah, he's doing his thing, and we're all, no problem.
Yeah.
And so it's a regular night, and it's busy, and the boys are already there. I was there all day. I was there for their sound check. Nikki still hadn't graduated from that stupid Ampeg combo bass that weighed like 1,000 pounds. I'd rather move 2 half stacks with amps than move that stupid Ampeg. The thing weighed a ton. It was ridiculous, but he was still using that. They were still struggling. They weren't, still didn't have a lot of money. And Nikki
still living 60 feet away from the bar.
Absolutely. And still poor as could be. Okay. Yep. Tommy was dating these twins. Remind me, Ben, I can't tell you on the show, but Tommy was dating these twins. One of the sisters is in a Rat video. I'll tell you a story about her. Don't let me forget that. Don't let me forget. Okay. Anyway, I'm so sorry.
I'm not going to forget. Tommy was dating twins. All right. So, yeah. Hey, Andy Carson.
So,
You, my
so
friend.
it's a wonderful night. The crew that's sold out. Anticipation is huge. The boys are literally kicking ass. The world, they're on top of the world. I'm at the backstage door. It's 20 minutes to showtime. And there's a knock at the back door. All right.
Thanks, Harry.
Boom, boom, boom. So I scurry down those steps and I pop that door open. And standing in front of me is a guy who, a black guy who looked essentially, I don't know if you remember Rick James. Remember Rick James?
Oh, I know Rick James, bitch.
Okay. Well, this guy looked just like Rick James. Okay. A smiling Rick James looking guy. And he had this bag.
John Shane says, "Can I join the green room chat, Ben?"
Right there, buddy. Yeah. And so he's standing there and he's got a garment bag like you get from a dry cleaner's thing, or something you keep a nice jacket in. It was obviously a very nice garment bag. He had it over his shoulder on like a coat hanger kind of a thing. And he smiles and I said, "What's up, man?" And he goes, "Hey, I'm here." I said, "That's great, dude. What do you want?" And he goes, "Well, I got Nikki's jacket." I said, "Dude, I don't know what you're talking about." He goes, "I brought Nikki's jacket. Nikki asked me to come here. I came all the way from the valley. I've got his jacket." I said, "I don't know anything about what you're talking about. What's your name?" He gives me his name. Darnell was his first name. Darnell. I look on I had my clipboard with me. I look, I said, and they had limited the Motley Crue's guest list, the guest list, to one person per individual.
Wow.
Okay. So with Stick and Barry, they could have approximately 7 people backstage. Okay.
Right.
And this was all listed. Keller had a zero tolerance, and he was like a stickler for the paperwork, and he wanted things to be this and that, and he was a bean counter. And so I'm looking at the guy. I said, "Man, you're not on the guest list. What do you mean you got a jacket?" And he goes, "Look, man," he gets a little flustered with me, you know, and I'm getting flustered with him at this point because it's 20 minutes of showtime, and there's like 150, 200 people around us walking up and down Clark Street and around the corner and everything, right across the street, and it's busy, and it's almost showtime, and I really don't have time for this. But he says he's got a jacket, and I said, "Dude, okay, you're here to bring Nikki a jacket." He said, "Yeah, he's expecting me." I said, "Let me see the jacket." And he goes, "Sure." And he pulls this around, and he unzips this coat. And guys, he pulls back the flaps on this, and I am looking face to face with the single most badass leather motorcycle jacket you have ever seen in your life. This is fire engine red leather. It looks like something that Rob Halford would have worn on stage. Right. It's a piece of stage clothing. $2,500 to $3,000 this jacket must have cost.
Something that you can only get basically in LA, New York. Like there's only a handful of places you can find something like that, first of all. Because
I want to point out this guy was dressed, he was wearing like $1,000 worth of clothes. He was very finely dressed. He was obviously not I very quickly got the vibe that he was legit and he was on the level. But here I had a problem. He wasn't coming in that door. He didn't have a ticket. He didn't have a ticket. He had no ticket. But I love those boys, okay? And so I looked at him. I said, "Man," I said, "why don't you, and it was a sold out show, okay? He wasn't going to get a ticket."
Yeah.
And so I'm doing
I was thinking the only thing I can see about being so anal about anybody else getting in is fire code. Like if they're just expecting something like that.
Well,
that's the only thing I can think of as I'm listening to the story.
Ben, this guy was a little overstepping his optimism here. He expected to show up, knock on that door, me let him in, and him hang out the entire night, 2 shows, for nothing, just to let him do it because he was bringing Nikki a jacket.
Right.
Well, this was this is evidently, supposedly, what Nikki had told him would occur.
Right.
But anyway, so he shows me this, he zips it back up, and I said, "Okay." I said, "Look." And I give him this, I basically try to explain to him, I can't just let you in the door. You appear to be a legitimate guy. I'm going to go upstairs. I'll get with the boys. It's 20 minutes. Now it's like 15 minutes to showtime, and I'll see what I can do. And he's like, well, don't leave me hanging out here. I said, dude, I'll be back. Be patient. So I work my way up through there. I get to the dressing room. I come in the dressing room, and I said, Nikki, and the boys were all ready. I mean, they were ready. They were almost in their powwow position. Hair was up, bro. Final net was in the air. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, I'm serious. I'm serious.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know, because I'm picturing, because they had all the hair at that time.
I have taken a shot of freaking Final Net in the face more than once from Motley Crue. Now, that is a true story, too. I'll tell you one of those sometime. But anyway.
Charles would not have to wear glasses today if it wasn't for Motley Crue.
I'm telling you. But anyway, so I said, Nikki, I said, God, and everybody's listening to me. And I said, Nikki, there's a guy downstairs. It says his name's Darnell. He's got a jacket. And Nikki's face lights up. He goes, he brought it? And I said, he's downstairs. He goes, dude, I met this guy at a party up in the hills. And he's telling me this like spaced out like a hippie story. Like he met this guy, and the guy's like provides wardrobe for the movies. And the guy told me he had this jacket that was just, I had to wear it. And I said, sure, dude, cool. And anyway, the guy showed up with the jacket. Caught Nikki and everybody completely off guard. So Nikki goes, he says to me, he goes, no, I'm sorry. Tommy goes, he says, dude, what's the jacket look like? And I said, dude, this thing is the most badass thing I've ever seen. So now everybody wants to see the jacket. Okay. But I have a problem. I have a huge problem. I can't let him in the door. The boys are ready to go on stage. They're not going to go down there and meet him at the door. That's not going to happen at this point.
Right.
So I have some quick decisions to make. So I said, look, I said, you want to wear this jacket? And Nikki says, yeah, if I could wear it, Charles, I would really love to wear it. I said, well, look, I said, and they all knew about the whole thing about we covered all that. Couldn't just bring him in the door. They didn't have anybody left on their guest list.
My niece heard this is at the Whiskey. He was asking, which club is this story?
Yeah. Whiskey a Go-Go, guys. Whiskey a Go-Go. And very early 82. And so I come out of the dressing room, and I told him, I said, look, I'll do my best. I'll do my best. So I shoot downstairs. I get the guy. I looked at the guy, and I said, look, I can't just let you in this club. I said, you're going to have to be patient. And so you're going to have to be patient. And I said, these boys are going on stage, and now it's like 9 minutes. I mean, this was all just real time. Just everything was just coming down. So I ran back up to the bar. I said, hang on here again. And I went back to the bar. I went to Louis because I knew that going to Red was an absolute waste of my time.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even like Motley Crue. He didn't even respect the fact that they could sell that place out and make more money in a night.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But
I've already written the guy off in my head. He's a douche canoe.
Oh, dude. He was.
I know the type.
If everyone would have conformed to him and done what he wanted, he'd have been a happy guy. He just wanted people to do what he wanted. It was interesting. I was really young in those days, and I was kind of rebellious, and I didn't like him. And so at one point, I just kind of shut him off, But I had to respect him because of who I worked for. Anyway, I go to find Louis. I do this from time to time. Whenever I had problems, I would always grab Louis because, he's got.
Basically, the long version, the buck basically stops with Louis.
My loyalty was to Mario and Louis.
Exactly,
as it should be, not to Red Keller.
Exactly,
it was not to Red Keller in any way, shape, or form. I had to show respect for him, but my loyalty wasn't even to the crew. My loyalty was Mario Maglione. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's make no bones about that. So I wasn't going to just let that guy come in the door because it was policy to not do that. Now, it was beyond my. I couldn't just do it. I didn't have authority.
Right.
But Louis did. Okay.
Exactly.
So I went to Louis real quick, and we're talking now. It's 8 minutes to showtime. And I said to Louis, I got a big problem. And I said, I got a guy out the back on Clark Street.
Thanks, Marcy.
He's got wardrobe for the guys to wear. He's not on the guest list. Forget the whole story, bro. I said, look, this guy's waiting. Nikki needs to wear this jacket. It's for his wardrobe on stage. I said, what can we do? And he starts to say, you haven't spoken to Red about this. No, I haven't. No. And he said, let the guy in, get him upstairs, keep him out of sight. We'll figure it out. See, because Louis loved Motley Crue. He respected them, and he wasn't going to let them down. You see, because we had their back. That's what we were supposed to do.
Well, and I'm thinking, like, Louis is one of those guys, like, how many bands has he seen gone through there? Right? And then go off to whatever, and he probably know, like, like, maybe not necessarily the first time they play, they may have it or not, but then you see the evolution of a band playing in your club over a couple of years. You're like, the boys are getting tight, and then, there's some suits in the crowd tonight.
It's the thing about it is in the older days before he came in to manage, I had the ability to make calls more freedom. A lot more freedom. A lot.
I'd imagine so. Yeah.
And he was taking the freedom away from everyone to do their jobs as they were comfortable. He was firing people. I'm
thinking, like, if you're working that door at that venue, you need to have the ability to let in 4 people a night on your call alone, because there could be 4 people that show up, because literally anybody could knock on that door. We've discussed it on and off air that, if the A-list celebrity that's all over everything in the world shows up at that time, you have to let them in, Charles. You know what I mean?
I ended up getting into trouble.
The event.
I ended up getting into trouble on more than one occasion, because when A-list celebrities show up, for instance, if that had been Peter Frampton and not the guy with the jacket,
right,
he would have come in the door.
Right.
I'm not sending Peter Frampton around to the front to make him buy a ticket. It's not going to happen. And that's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean when I say he changed the policy and the whole way the rhythm of the club was.
Which that's the scene. That's the hang. That's everything.
Cool.
Like Eddie Van Halen shows up, you got to let him in. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Michael Anthony, he's not going through the front door. He owns that place still to this day. He could go up there, knock on the door. They're going to let him in. That's how it's supposed to be. And
thank you very much, Andy Carson.
Louis said, let him in. Now it's like 6 minutes to showtime now. I grabbed the guy. I said, cool, let's go. The guys are going on stage. I had Joyce watching the backstage door, one of the waitresses, for me while I was dealing with all this mess. I get him up to the dressing room. I let him in the door. He walks in. He hangs that jacket up on a hook and he unzips it. He's saying hello, this and that, doing his thing with Nikki. And when he pulled that thing back, the look, the gasps from those guys, it was like, holy, just straight up. These guys were like, my God, that's the most badass jacket I have ever seen. And I'm like, I told you, right? On the back of the jacket, you guys, was a pentagram about this big. It was a small pentagram. They weren't into that thing yet. Shout at the Devil had not come out.
No, that's still a whole other album away.
And so I look at the guy and I said, dude, who would own this jacket? And he looked at me and he said, the devil himself. That's what the guy said to me. And the guys all laughed. We all laughed.
No, I get it, though, because if it's a movie prop, it could be the devil in a movie happens to be wearing that jacket.
Well, I'm not sure that so much it was a movie prop as it was a piece of high-end wardrobe that was custom made. It was very expensive. The guy who had it worked for the movies. That was his job.
Right.
That was his thing. And he knew, it turns out he was like an A-list celebrity vendor.
That's right, Tom. Sundays with Sir Charles.
I wish I knew. Thank you. You rock, bro. But anyway, so everyone's, so Nikki comes over and he goes, God, I hope it fits. And the guy says, no, I wouldn't have told you about it. I knew it was your size. He sized him up for this jacket just looking at him at this party he was at. Nikki puts that jacket on, and guys, I got to tell you, he put it on it. I swear to God, the Heavens Party, you could hear the angels sing when he put that thing on, man. It looked custom, like a custom fit. And it was ultra badass. And with his Firebird bass, he looked so cool. He looked so cool with the black hair up. And he even had shades on, man. He just, oh my God. It was like a whole nother level. And the thing that was so cool about it was the guys didn't have a lot of money for stage props. They didn't have a lot of bells and whistles. They were trying to do stuff on the cheap constantly. And this was like just a really cool moment. Just a really cool moment. So anyway, he goes on stage. Show goes off without a hitch, no problem. He was complaining about the jacket being really, really heavy because it had so many studs and things on it. Mm-hmm. But they rocked the show. It was awesome. So the show's over. The club's emptied out. They're getting ready to fill it in for the next group of people. And here comes Red Keller after me. He had spotted this dude. Okay, now remember now, Louis told me let him in.
Yep.
We hadn't heard any drama.
Yep.
Nothing but drama. Red spotted this guy, and evidently when the first 400 plus people came through the door, he stood there and stamped every single person and every ticket. That's what he did.
Right.
And he saw this guy who was supposed to be staying in. I said to this guy, I said, darn it, look, you got to do us a favor. You got to stay in the shadows. You can't be out roaming the club, hang backstage. If you got to get a drink at the bar, I guess maybe you can, but God, get a waitress to get it for you. You've got to be a fly on the wall, dude. He was like, no problem. I mean, he was being cool, but he went to the upstairs bar and Red saw him. And Red saw him talking to me. And Red came up to me and confronted me why this guy was in the club. He doesn't have a stamp on his wrist. He'd already gone up to him and asked him. And the guy's response to him was, I lost my ticket. So now there's this awkward moment where there's a guy without a ticket, no stamp on his hand. Red's getting suspicious and asking a lot of questions. But the club was slam packed again. People were coming in, stuff was going on. But he did not let that go for the rest of the evening on us. And the show went off. The second show went off, no problem. Motley Crue absolutely kicked ass. It was one of the last Motley Crue shows that I actually got to see at the Whiskey, maybe the second to the last one. Mm-hmm. And about the second to the last one. And, I got to, Nicky was very thankful and grateful that I'd gone out of my way to help him have that. It was wasn't the most friendly with Nicky as I was with any of the other boys. The other boys and I were more friendly than I was with Nicky. But Nicky had this moment where he came up and he thanked me, and he gave me a half hug, which was really cool because I love those guys. They're my favorite. Mm-hmm. And Alan Kaufman was there. Now that I believe was the last Alan Kaufman show. He was actually out after that show, and Vicky managed him for I think the next 3 to 4 months. She took over. She was a manager at the Licorice Pizza down the street, and she managed Motley Crue for a short period of time. She was the one who threw the signing party I refer to once in a while. But Red came back up to me at the end of that night with the most just flustered. I beat him, Ben. I beat him.
Yeah.
I don't mean I hit him. I mean, I won. Okay. Right. I won. He had nowhere to go with it. He couldn't punish me in any way, shape, or form. Louis saw to that. And I got to help Motley Crue out. It was one of the last shows I did for Motley Crue. That was just a month or two before I actually ended up leaving the club, Mm-hmm. And I still came back for other shows, working for West. It was really cool. I got to keep for another 3 or 4 years. I got to keep the good inner circle of people that I got to know. I stayed friends with them, and so it made the 80s extra special. Everything changed when 1990 rolled around. By the middle of 1990, the beginning of 91, there was just a major shift. Grunge was a thing. I moved away,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that jacket was the first pentagram that Motley Crue ever sported on a stage. It was a full year and a half, almost 2 years before Shout at the Devil, if I get that correct.
Wow. Well, we're already an hour and a half in here, basically. Yeah. Let's do, because Charles likes to do this, let's do a little trivia.
Yeah, in the spirit of Halenville Live and Show Me Your Pick with Fruitcake Tony, you guys, we do trivia. That's kind of our thing. We love doing it. We like interacting with the chat. Mm-hmm. Some of my closest friends on social media are members of, well, hell, they're probably in this chat right now.
I was going to say both communities, definitely, which is a lot of the same community. And so we got a little bit of trivia tonight to win, a prize.
Yeah. Any rock t-shirt you want, any band, I don't care. Skinner, Goo Goo Dolls, Zeppelin, Trickster, I don't care. I'll pick the shirt. You just send your size and address to Ben. If you win, here's how we're going to do this. And last time I asked you a question about, I think the question was who actually showed Nikki how to make the fake blood in the mannequin.
Which I was going to mention, what was it on the super chat here from Andy? He says, story time with Uncle Charles should be a regular show. Great content tonight. Yes, this is, I believe, part 4. If you go back into the playlist of Sunday Night Hangs, Charles and I, it's when the mood strikes, essentially. We just let karma figure it out, and it's every month or two we hang out and we tell stories and have fun, and and we're gonna give something.
Ben's gracious enough, Andy, to let me come on here and run my mouth to you guys. I enjoy the heck out of it. It's really fun.
I love the stories because it's as much inside baseball as it is a fan perspective, and those are the stories we love, and it's just like, I've said it more than once, you are the Forrest Gump of the Sunset Strip, Charles, sorry to say. You happen to, if people are snapping about you, go do a Google image search of the whiskey, folks, in a certain time frame. You never know. You might find Charles in the background of a photo or two. I'm just saying.
There. They're definitely out there. They're out there. So I'm going to show you guys. Here's how we're going to do this. I will show you, and Ben, if you would put me on the full screen. That way, when I show the picture, it'll, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'll show you guys a photo of a bona fide rock star when they were very young, not infant, young. Just tell me who it is.
First correct answer that we see in the chat will win a t-shirt.
And if you answer and get it, if you're going to play, please make sure that you're willing to give Ben your address and shirt size and the band that you want a shirt from. And I don't care who, anyone you want. As long as you're willing to do that, obviously play. If not, then it'll be kind of a waste of time. But anyway, and let's do that. So you ready, Ben?
I am.
All right. I'm going to pull up a photograph.
Middleworks like bandwidth will be a deciding factor, folks. Get ready. I don't know. I didn't get it. So
okay, make me a full screen, please.
There we are.
Right, you guys. This is a picture of a bona fide rock star. Just tell me who this is, and I'll move it around and get it to where it comes in really good. Let me move it around. Let me try this. Let me try this right like that. How about that? Ben, you tell me. Talk to me, brother.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Can you guys in the chat see it okay?
It is not EVH.
No.
But Terry did a line in the chat, so we got any answers after this.
I want you guys to win. There's no time frame on this. My arm won't get tired for a while. You can. I'll be glad to keep showing this. But
hang on. And then if I do it this way, no, that's not. Hang on. Different buttons here. No, that's not it. How do I? There. No. All right. Well, we can show it repeatedly. So.
Excellent.
No, cool. Not seeing. I'm seeing some. I'm going to say a couple of close answers, Charles. That's all. The only thing I'm going to give that's close to a hint is I see a couple of close answers, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I can see that, Ben. I can certainly see that. Very good. Keep it up, guys. Rock and roll.
No correct answers so far.
Very
But
cool.
yeah, you should be able to kind of figure out the age of the person based on the hair product used in the photo.
Yeah, yeah. I believe.
And we have a winner.
Look at that. Very cool. Very cool.
Birdberful.
Awesome. That's a name I haven't heard before. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Mark.
Very cool. So, guys, let me show you something. So, let me do this, and I will do this. Can you see it now?
There we go.
That's Mr. Robert Plant at the age of around 12, maybe 13 years old.
So if you want to email me at the email address, canuckswithguitars@gmail.com, Ferd Burfel, or or you can contact, I think he's a double dipper. He might be a patron too, so he could contact me through the Patreon, I believe.
Very cool. Very cool.
Excuse me. Yes, and thanks, Charles, for doing a bit of trivia there. Yeah,
awesome, very cool. I didn't know if they were going to get it quick or if they'd take a while.
That was pretty good. That was a mix of and I like say I saw a couple Jimmy Page guesses, and I'm like close, same band.
Ballpark, very close to the ballpark, right there. Yeah. That's awesome, very cool. Hey, congratulations. Yeah. Just let Ben know what band you want, and we'll get that out to you, immediately. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Perfect. He'll get me through Patreon. Nice. I was going to say, folks, if you want to hear some of these off-air stories, if you become a Patreon or a member, I might repeat one or two. I won't do it publicly, but amongst friends we do Zoom calls a couple times a month, Charles, and actually, I'll hit you up for the next one. You should jump in on one of those. Anywho.
Oh, that would be great.
We do them, like one Saturday a month and one Wednesday evening a month. And we make sure we're done before Halenville starts because,
Well, that is just wonderful YouTube at that point. That's great, brother. I would love that. And
it's funny because it's like this, we'll talk music and gear, but then it's also, hey, how's your day go? How's your week going? Men's Anonymous meeting in many ways, and we very just get on a Zoom call. Charles 75N's nice enough to host them for us, and we did one yesterday afternoon for a couple hours.
Nice. I'd love to get involved in that, Ben. It would be awesome, dude. Absolutely awesome. It was funny coming out of when I got to the whiskey, man. Bands like the Knack were no longer a thing in Hollywood, but just 2 years before they were huge. Rockabilly, Stray Cats. There were so many bands that were trying to emulate the Stray Cats. So many bands that were trying to emulate other bands. It was really crazy. It was absolutely crazy. But getting to see all of the bands sort of competing with one another and seeing certain musicians outshine other ones and sort of standing out. It was neat. It was kind of neat. I remember Slaughter. He was a little kid, man. Tracy Guns, little kid, just little kid. Lars Ulrich. Good God. It's like they what do you say, every 3 to 4 year age gap, right? You're just going to have constantly yes.
New bands playing in the club, new fans watching bands getting inspired to go home, start their own bands to play in the club 3 years later, and go for it, Marcy. Randy Price asks, did you ever have a chance to meet Gary Moore?
No, never got to meet Gary.
Okay.
I saw him. It was, walked by me when I worked for West, but I never said hello to him. If knowing what I know now, I would have made a beeline because I didn't realize. I knew he was a wonderful guitar player, but I hadn't absorbed him over the years. He was new when I saw him with Thin Lizzy, and but I did get to say hello to Phil Lynott, that was really cool. He was absolutely gracious, wonderful, wonderful guy. Sweet, soft-spoken, monster bass player, unique bass player for that matter. Yeah. Yeah.
Marcy asks, has anyone seen the new Roger Waters interview? I haven't seen that yet.
Roger
I've
Waters,
heard about it.
I was into Pink Floyd just like everybody else was in high school and in the 70s essentially, and they're just a staple with me in my music. That's when I think of all my friends when we were in high school hanging out and stuff, on Friday night and everything. Pink Floyd was just them and Led Zeppelin were an integral part of all the music that I listened to. We used to
I
go
lean
to
I lean more to Zeppelin than Pink Floyd, but yes.
Well, so my Pink Floyd connection, there's a place called the Griffith Park Observatory in Los Angeles, and it's literally an observatory. But what they started doing in the late 70s is they had this thing called laserium. It became very popular in the 70s, and it's basically laser light shows put to different types of music. And they had one for Zeppelin, they had one for Hendrix, they had one for I had a really great one for them, for Pink Floyd. And I think the first one I saw was Dark Side of the Moon to lasers. And it was an event. I mean, it was an event, and it was something beyond seeing them live, because I've been fortunate enough to see the Wall. I worked it for West. That was one of the first shows that I had worked, and that was amazing. I mean, that was amazing production.
Nice. Tom says he asked Kyan to pick the music in the car today, and he picked Dark Side of the Moon.
Nice. That's just
Shout out to Kyan.
Epic Floyd,
Hey, Holly.
Holly, how are you, sweetheart? It's good to see you. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I'm looking in the chat.
I saw a question I was going to ask. Got scroll. Y'all are chatty in the chat. Which is a good thing. Jeff K asks, did Dale and Terry Bozzio play the club during your tenure?
No, but I saw Dale and Terry separately. Missing Persons is what we're talking about. They were huge in '83. They played on the first day of the US Festival, and I had seen them in the Roxy. See, Terry Bozzio is a jazz fusion drummer on a world-class scale. The fact that he played in Missing Persons was, I don't want to say it was a step down. What he did was he kind of came into a genre and made the band his own. He married Dale. They were husband and wife for a while. And he was so over accomplished a musician to be doing that specific music, but he was so good at doing it that he was perfect. He's on like a Simon Phillips level or a Carl Palmer level. Yeah. Wow. Missing Persons. I haven't thought about them in a while. Dale, I saw her on the Sunset Strip a couple of times. She was a little bit of a party girl, and she was kind of a glitz and glamoury kind of a thing. But that's the genre they were in. Mm-hmm. It was an interesting time. Some of the best bands that played the whiskey were not necessarily the hair metal bands like the Bus Boys, bands that were associated with like maybe movie soundtracks and things of that nature.
Sure.
Talking. When the band started riding the MTV wave, that changed everything as well. It was, I was talking about how things were changing, and then when like bands like Warrant and Poison came in the mid 80s, the bands, the clubs in Hollywood were not really letting thrash flourish like it used to at all, flat out. And punk had been sent to the Valley and other places. And so at that time, when all that was changing, and then grunge put a dead end to it, it was just a trip to get to see all of that occur. And very interesting times. It's weird at my age now. I'm 60, you guys, and I sit and I look back and I think about, and I remember vividly many things, stories that I'm going to tell you guys in the future, and things that happened. It's amazing my recall at this point. I'm kind of proud of myself that I can remember some things. I was talking with a couple of friends of mine who were my age, and they're getting a little shaky. I got to tell you, getting a little shaky on their memory. I'd have to remind them. I said, no, remember you were doing this.
Well, I remember my mom took a trip out to LA in the winter, like 84, early 85. My uncle was doing a TV series out there at the time, I think on the Paramount lot. Mm-hmm. And so, she went over and did that. But then one day, she was going to go hang out on the Sunset Strip, check it out, So, and I had asked her, she's like, any souvenirs you want while I'm in California? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
I want a studded wristband because I knew they had rock shops in LA.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which was beyond what a head shop was. It was that small portion of a head shop, which was rockwear, which you could get in Toronto, but there was whole rockwear stores. And I was like, okay, she's like, okay, and I remember she got me a studded wristband, which was awesome. And while she was there, guy with a clipboard on the sidewalk, you want to be in a music video? And it might have been at the Whiskey, or it was one of the bars. And sure, she couldn't tell me who the band was. I'm like, it's probably a band I like. You know what I mean? I'm thinking crappy bands don't shoot music videos at bars on the Sunset Strip.
Oh yeah. Wow.
So she's like, I remember there was a lot of smoke machines going. I'm like, so it probably wasn't that good a band, so they're trying to fill it in so it didn't need as many people. Yeah. But I was like, yeah, I get it, and she's just like, it was still crowded, people. And I'm like, yeah, during the day, I'd imagine this is half people are hanging out, half people are tourists, and the other half are trying to get from one place to the other for work, type thing.
Absolutely, brother. Hey, any more questions from the chat? Where are we at?
We'll go a little while longer here, folks. And then,
I just love this community.
We'll definitely do another one, folks. Easy. Before you get too stressed out, we will definitely be doing another one. Charles is always welcome back here, as well as I'll be appearing with Charles this coming Saturday on Fruitcake Tony's Show Me Your Pick, where we're going to discuss Nazareth, which I don't know. Do we send a link to Cousin Doug, too? Because, like, 2 members of the band live in his town now. Yeah, they live, like, 3 hours west of me in Kitchener, Ontario.
Man. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Nazareth, man, they're from the beginning, dude.
They are. And they, you know what? For the amount of success that they had, I think they had a good time, Charles, because otherwise the 2 band members wouldn't be hosting an open mic on Monday nights in Kitchener, Ontario. I'm just saying. You don't host open mics if you're,
wow.
Or you're just doing it for the love of the music. I don't know.
Wow.
It could go either way. But
Nazareth is a band name that I remember from as early as my youth, as early as a memory as I have. Nazareth was around.
Doug says, I don't live in Kitchener. No, you live Kitchener adjacent. Because Kitchener and Waterloo butt right up against each other.
Yeah.
It's our twin cities, which is now a Tri-Cities. Now the Cambridge is right up against it. So
that's awesome, brother. That's awesome, man.
Yes, which had a legendary bar in Kitchener, actually. What was the name of that? Lulu's in Kitchener. It was a former Kmart, Charles.
Whoa. You mean they turned the Kmart into a bar?
And they put a bar down one whole wall.
That's a really long, big bar.
Helix played there a lot.
Wow.
A lot of bands played there.
There was a punk place called Godzilla's in the Valley. They had a stage on either side, and then there was a big wall down the middle that would split it up. And there was a bar on both sides of the wall, and those bars were about as big as what you were talking about. Just big, massive. You could put a lot of people and serve a lot of drinks at one time. But the Waters Club was ridiculous. It was literally like you're leaning at the bar, ordering drinks, watching a rock band over the bartender's shoulder. It was very popular. Lots and lots of bands, both rock and punk bands played there. Lots of bands, all kinds of genres. But in the 80s, especially the early 80s, they were really showcasing punk on another level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mainly because they were making a lot of money at it. That really was the driving force to everything that had to do with the music scene in LA. it was all, the venues, as far as they were concerned, all they wanted to do was fill themselves up and make money. And that was their number one goal.
Right.
So they would latch on to any musical genre. When, for instance, when Slayer and Metallica first started playing, they would quite literally come in on a Monday night. They did not even, the first show Slayer did at the Troubadour was a Monday night. And they were starting, there was I don't believe he was a DJ. I think he was a DJ, but he started this thing called it was called not Metal Madness, but it was like a weekly thing where on that specific night they would showcase metal, and it was the first time that it was called metal. They called it metal, and it was specifically that genre. And the Troubadour couldn't believe it because they were sold out on a Monday night. Slam packed like it was a Friday or Saturday, but it was a Monday night.
Wow.
And it was a thrash band.
Right.
It caught them all off guard. But I promise you, within 2 months, 3 months, there were dozens of venues that opened up and were trying to showcase and get on the thrash bandwagon.
Right.
And just, pushing the hype as hard as they could. And
well, if anything, LA is known for being a little trendy on occasion there, Charles.
Well, remember the old thing that all you had to do to get signed as a hair metal band was be a hair metal band back in the very early 80s? Well, that same exact rule applied to thrash. You wanted to get into thrash and play in the clubs? Just be a thrash band. That's all you had to do.
Right.
To get into a club and play for a period of time. It all ended. Everything,
as it does.
But that's just how it was. And so it's kind of interesting how, the venue supplies the band, who supplies the fans, who supplies the venue. And it's just this big merry-go-round of, it's all about making money, you guys.
Exactly. Thanks, T. Ricky.
But it's really,
we had a question, and I forget who said it. Sorry, apologize who said it. But in your opinion, which we all have opinions. In your opinion, what's the best band you saw play at the clubs that never made it?
That's a very good question.
You're like, wow, these guys are great, but then they never.
We'll go through
because I'm thinking it had to be a bit of a deal where over the years, the amount of bands you would see, and then they get signed, you're like, oh yeah, I remember them. Oh yeah, I remember them.
That is not an easy answer. Because the answer is a lot of bands. There were lots of bands that were flipping wonderful. But what would happen, like, I told you the Snow story when Kevin Dubrow stole Carlos Cavazo. Snow had been around for years and they just never were breaking. But Carlos was a shining star. And so Carlos came out. So it wasn't maybe necessarily about a band all the time. It was more about an individual who shined, and that went on all the time. But as far as bands that should have made it and didn't, there were a bunch of bands that were on. If you made it to the level, this is the weird thing that was very interesting. I saw lots of bands get to where they could fill up the Whiskey, the Trube, the Starwood. That's a really fantastic level to be at. And when you're at that level, like Motley Crue was for the better part of a year, you have this vibe that you're going to make it because the level of success, you're on another level.
Right.
And then I watched a lot of bands get there and then slowly lose it and get stepped out because another band would take their thunder. Van Halen did that to 100 flipping bands between the 70s and the 80s and beyond. Okay, but especially in the club days, when they started breaking, when they became the house band at Gazzari's, they dominated.
Yeah, because it's not like Van Halen opened the floodwaters for a bunch of bands the way Motley Crue did. You know what I mean?
Well.
Like there was because there was because that's New Wave was kind of in between that. You know what I mean?
I didn't get to, I was on a show the other day with Chris Gill. We were fortunate enough to have Chris Gill, Donnie Ward, and Johnny B on our show, Halenville, last week. And Chris Gill did essentially, he was a writer for Guitar World magazine, but he got to hang in the 70s and kind of follow Van Halen like I did with a couple of bands in the 80s. And so he was there when I didn't do the same thing he did, obviously, but I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And he got to watch Van Halen quite literally, in my opinion, start the American invasion of the world, which was the counter to the European invasion, the English invasion, European invasion that came in a decade prior to that. When I initially in the 70s, my favorite bands were all from England. Every single one of them. And until I was standing in my the Whiskey A Go-Go and heard Motley Crue for the first time, my whole musical repertoire in my car were cassette decks of Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, so on and so forth. Deep Purple, they're all English bands for the most part. Thin Lizzy, not English, but there were a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, 80% of it was all English bands, man. And then Van Halen hits the scene.
Oh, Randy, thanks.
And
I imagine that there are so many bands that didn't want to follow the mainstream and not just put out music that was following a trend. Well, there would be that too, yes.
Well, and they did that because from necessity. They were trying to get in and be heard. And any avenue they could scrape and scrimp to get down. I mean, it was literally a fight to get to the top of the heap.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe that they didn't see the immediate follow-up after, say, Van Halen 2, because it took a couple of years of woodshedding, by everybody to get up to that, where we had that next wave of players.
Well, there were a bunch of bands. Like, back to the question, Gary Myrick and the Figures were not were rock. I would call them rock, sort of a new wave / glam rock. Not really glam. No, I'm sorry, new wave pop rock. New wave sort of pop rock, but they were very good, very, very good. They were popular. They were there was a big a vibe behind that band, and the band was managed by excellent management. Their footprint that they left was first class, but they sort of faded away. The Sparks, a band called Sparks, they were huge. They were huge in the club scenes. I mean, massive. They sold the whiskey out every time they came. Class act, wonderful vibe, faded away. There were lots of bands that fit that description.
Well, it's like how many bands really only last a year or two?
I'll tell you the rock band that I'm going to say this. I know you guys hear me talk about Anthony Steele and the Black Sheep from time to time.
Yep.
They were a class act on the Strip, as well as just all the club scenes in LA. Not just the Strip. When I say the Strip, I mean LA, and there's a lot of clubs.
And as a result, I interviewed Anthony Steele.
Yes, you did, and I've actually been patiently waiting for well over a year to get that man in front of me, because there's questions and things I want to tell him about conversations he and I had. That
I wonder if I could arrange that. Let me see what I can do about that.
Blow his mind. I haven't even said him on the show yet. I won't. I'm going to wait till I get
it. Yeah, I'll reach out. I think I might be friends with him on Facebook, to tell you the truth. So I might be able to reach out to him. If I have a way to contact him, I will.
We've been. It's going to happen. I'm sure it will. But he was actually quite literally one of the classiest rock metal bands. His genre was quite literally more of a thrash meets Motown kind of a deal. But very hard rock, very very loud, Motorhead loud, and they had wonderful music. Their songs were refined. They had a niche. I was surprised they didn't go any further. I was surprised they didn't get signed. I was amazed that they didn't get signed. At least not, at the time when I was involved and saw them actually doing stuff. He was also a session musician, so he had a whole nother world that he was involved in that was, separate from necessarily clubbing and doing those gigs. But they stand out like a sore thumb to me. watching Cliff Burton in Trauma, watching them, and their music was raw. It was raw. I can't think of another word to describe it, but it was wonderful, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And now it didn't necessarily appeal to anyone who was 25, 30 years old, but if you were 15 to 22, 25 years old, that was your stuff.
Right.
And that was their fan base. It was an interesting phenomenon to watch that. And then to watch bands alienate themselves, implode, self-destruct for various reasons.
Sure.
But the talent always shined. A good band didn't necessarily have to be this, that, or the other thing. Good music is good, and it always will be.
Mm-hmm.
I used to enjoy. I took my girlfriends to shows. I had girlfriends take me to shows. Cyndi Lauper, Madonna, all kinds of female artists that are not necessarily my thing. The kind of music that I want to listen to, but the musicians. John Five was playing with Madonna when I saw him. I didn't even know who John Five was. I feel stupid now, but quite accomplished musician, guitar player playing with her band.
I just imagine you're watching a show, you're like, I'm not really into the tunes, but man, that guitar player sounds pretty good.
Yeah, well, he's fitting a genre of music. He's so accomplished he can do that. So Madonna at the time,
we have several friends of the channel that have done, I'll say, similar gigs between, what was RJ Ronquillo was Ricky Martin's guitar player, and Sean Hurwitz was with Enrique Iglesias for a number of years.
Yes. Well, also back to that question that we were answering. There was a band called Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs. Top Jimmy should have been much bigger than he was. Carlos Guitarlos was his guitar player. I don't know if you guys ever, he's getting really old now, guys, but I knew him in the day when he was young, and he was one hell of a guitar player. He was funny. The dude was, God, he was the life of the party. And Top Jimmy would be, he was a little bit of a drinker. He was a lot of a drinker. And in the backstage annex, I remember him like they were yesterday, but Carlos was just, he was just the sweetest guy. They called him Carlos Guitarlos. That was what everybody's nickname was. And he was Top Jimmy's guitar player. The Rhythm Pigs, you hear Van Halen in one of David Lee Roth's song and lyrics. He talks about Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs. They have a song about these guys. Yep. They did not make it to a level that they should have.
Interesting. Hobo roadied for Top Jimmy for one gig.
There you go. Well, then you know what I'm talking about, man. And Carlos, if you got to interact with him, you know what a sweetheart of a dude he was. Jimmy was awesome. They were all class guys. And that's answered your question. That's one of the bands that I was surprised. On the flip side, I got to see some bands like Heart. One of the very first show I ever worked at the Whiskey, I got to see Ann and Nancy Wilson in Heart, but it wasn't the Heart that we knew from the 70s. It was some of the original members, but they were the girls were running the whole show, guys. And it was the beginning, just the very beginning. MTV wasn't a thing yet, but it was very soon to be. And watching them rise to stardom again was the other side of the question that we were just asking, know. So it was a mixed batch of all kinds of stuff. It was just wonderful to get to see. I obviously gravitated to the rockers. Sure. That really was sort of my thing, but I had lots of friends who were in punk bands. I had lots of friends who were in new wave bands. 45 Grave, the entire band, 45 Grave, came over to my girlfriend's apartment and would crash in the living room, guys. Members of the Circle Jerks, iconic flipping band, right?
Yep. Still going.
Yes.
I think I saw it. I'm 99% sure I recently saw a post.
But
they play in and around California.
It was just really cool because everybody didn't have money. Everybody wasn't successful. It's funny. I had more money than any member of Motley Crue combined in 1981. Now, it didn't last for very long, but I've bought Tommy many a Pioneer Chicken box to eat and this and that, and hanging out, cruising because I could and he couldn't. But
Sure.
he was going to be a rock star. I always used to tell him that. One time he was sitting at the bar upstairs at the, for those of you who don't know, the Roxy has a private bar. It's called the Top of the Eye. And it's a very, very exclusive private bar in the Roxy. And Tommy was sitting up there one time over in the shadows, and I was just happened to be down there. I wasn't there with him. I just noticed he was up there, and I ran up and said hi. And he had the flu. He shouldn't even have been out of bed. He had running a temperature. He was sipping on a Michelob, and I remember telling him, I said, dude, I said, is there anything you need? And he goes, no, Mario's, this and that, and taking care of him. And, he was going to be one of the greatest rock drummers in the world.
That's what it was. Circle Jerks have a new premier guitar thingy. Yes, a rig rundown.
There you go.
That's right. I would imagine it would be a fairly quick rig rundown, being punk, Charles. I can't see, a huge pedal board with like lasers and space modules. No, it's going to be, I take this, I plug it into that, I turn it up.
Yeah. But that's how it is, guys. That's how it was. And...
Well, we could wrap it up on this note here, and then, we're going to hang for a little off air, but we will definitely do this again soon. And, we covered definitive cruise stories, as well as the scene in general. We talked about various genres of music. We opened it up on that, which is awesome. And, it's always fun, Charles. Every time it's like,
thank you so much for letting me come on here, Ben. I love you guys. I love this channel. I love this community. We're a tight-knit bunch around here. We back each other up. We support each other just like we're supposed to. It is a wonderful, wonderful environment.
It is its own scene in many ways. It is its scene. And, look at each channel as a club, and we have regulars at each of the clubs. And some of y'all bar hop a lot around a lot of clubs now, which is great, and like I say, we always, that's one of the wonderful things. You jump into a chat, you see a bunch of familiar names and a few new friends like you haven't met yet. That's all they are. It's friends you haven't met yet.
I've got a couple of stories I'll keep for your channel.
Laz, it's 4 a.m. in Budapest.
Laz,
awesome. I'm glad you're having an amazing adventure, buddy. I love you. Keep the content coming.
Laz took off. I saw on his social media. He's on the other side of the world. Am I correct on this, Ben?
Yeah. He's in Budapest, Hungary.
What a rocker! My goodness, dude. Budapest rocks. Absolutely, man.
He's like, why am I awake? Because you think it's 7 p.m. your local time. That's why.
I don't get to interact with Laz as much as I used to get to talk to him a lot. And he's got his new channel. He does a lot of great stuff. And we get spread so thin, Ben. It's hard.
Everyone should check out Laz's channel too.
Check it out, guys. He's such a good guy. He's a real genuine dude, and that's really a great.
Hey, the dude bought me breakfast once. That's all I'm saying.
You can't be
He's a nice enough guy. He'll buy you breakfast.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Awesome.
There's Paul McNary. He's just been hanging out with the headphones in his chair. He's awesome. I love Paul. Yeah. So, of course, hold the line here. I want to thank everybody that tuned in tonight. Extra thanks to the mods for doing their mod thing, and special thanks to anyone that donated tonight. Much love on that. It helps pay bills and such, and keep putting out the content. Thank you, Terry, Laz's channel. And I'll be back tomorrow night with Canucks with Guitars with Terry, possibly Tom. We'll see. It depends on if Tom's awake. He gets to decide if and when he wants to show up. He's like, there's already 2 guys there. Tom's been very busy away from YouTube. And Charles, I had a brief phone call with Tom yesterday.
Did you really?
He's like, dude,
I
have a lot of stuff going on, but I'm also getting a lot of stuff done. And I said, good. Now, have you got some sun? And he's like, yes, I'm like, good. So you don't look as transparent and pale. He's like, no. I'm like, good. So
I saw him on I think it might have even been your show a few days ago. Was he on?
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah. He looked really good. He looked like he'd gotten a tan, but I miss Tommy. I haven't been with him on a show in just a little bit, and I love Tommy and I miss him. And I'm saying it on YouTube. Look at that. Yeah.
Awesome, Ferd Burful, thank you.
You guys
are contest winner tonight, Ferd Burful, with a shirt by band and size to be named later.
Cool.
And
very cool, man. Yeah. So, if it's okay with you guys, anytime I come on, I'll always do a shirt. We'll do trivia. I love doing trivia. It's part of the other channel that I participate in with Free Cake Tony and Sandra and Brendan and Tommy. And
I always love bringing a taste of that over here to this channel.
Neil Daly, yeah, we have a great community. And
I think, the last time we did we hung out to your Memorial Day weekend where we did. Yep. I was over there, and you guys were all over here. The next night, which was fun.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. So on that note, he's been Charles. I've been Ben. You've been you, because that's how it works.
That's right.
Unless someone changed their identity during the show.
Right there.
JJ, brother James. Hey, shout out, JJ.
I haven't seen you in a minute, brother. It's good to see you, JJ.
As far as I know, he may still be in Hawaii at this point.
Really?
Wrapped up recording of his album. Has a guitar endorsement deal, Charles.
What? Really?
Got himself an endorsement deal. I am so proud of
JJ's been a busy boy, evidently.
JJ's been very busy. He's got a festival he's playing this month.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that off air.
I hadn't mentioned at all anything about the last few weeks of my life. I did the stadium tour and got to see Motley Crue with Def Leppard and Poison. And then last night I went to see Loverboy with REO Speedwagon and Styx. And we hadn't even talked about it, but it was one of the best rock shows I've been to in my entire life. And I've seen some shows, you guys. These old men are kicking ass. And I mean quite literally kicking it. Loverboy came out, and Ben and I were talking about this at the beginning of the show before we came on. Loverboy was always keyboard driven when you heard him on the radio. You always heard the synthesizer, and it sort of dominated the music to me. But
nice. JJ's back from Hawaii, heading home from rehearsal. I'm going to hit you up tomorrow, brother.
Very cool, brother.
I was easing off. I know you've been busy, so I'm going to hit you up tomorrow. Awesome. Before you get busy again.
But they... oh, God, Ben, I lost track of what I was saying.
REO Speedwagon.
Yes.
Oh, Loverboy was keyboard based, and
in concert they've always been heavier with guitar, and there's more of a balance. And so when you saw Loverboy in concert, the keyboards were more in the background, and you heard a driving guitar. And last night this guy came out with 2 Marshall full stacks, and absolutely the sound that I remember from Loverboy was spot on. I mean, they brought it, and it was great. They played every tune. I was blown away. The venue was almost sold out. There were 20,000 people there singing every song. Wonderful experience. Then REO Speedwagon comes up. Right out of the park. They played every song they had. Kevin Cronin is 70 flipping years old, you guys. You can't tell his age. You know he's that old, but he does such a good job. You don't even notice it. He is delivering it like he was 20 years younger. Still blew my mind. They sound as good as they did back in the day. Now, I was fortunate to see them with Gary, and it's not the same thing, but I'm going to say this. Dave Amato is an unbelievably accomplished guitar player. He kicks ass. He rocks hard. He had for the guitar nerds, he's a Gibson dude, man. And he brings out all these custom Gibsons, Les Pauls.
He's got an amazing collection.
But Ben, I meant to bring this up in the show, and I didn't. You know the Kramer that you've been building, part 1, part 2, part 3? It's got the fabric.
Yeah.
He comes out with one Strat. Okay, only one Strat. black. And I'm looking at it, and on the big screen, I could see it just as clear as the day. I mean, it was this big, right? And I'm looking at the relicking, and I realized the relicking is not relicking like you'd see bare wood. It was an inlaid. The relicking was actually replaced with fabric. And it was a fabric relic on this guitar. I don't know what this guitar
So it was probably an original, the fabric top. The Fender would do a burst around the fabric top.
It was, imagine the relic section, like right here on the top of the body when your arm rests on it. And, you know, some guys would play with bracelets and things to just shred it out. Well, it's thoroughly shredded, massively coming across the whole top, and it's got fabric inlaid.
Yeah. I know that guitar.
That was the guitar of the night. That was guitar of the night. All the Les Pauls and the perfectly book matched maple caps and all of this and that. That guitar stood out to me. I thought of you when I saw that guitar.
Yeah, it's a sweetheart.
Came out. Interesting. You know, I remember the old Sticks. They have a Dennis DeYoung, the original lead singer, keyboard player. Hard got to replace. What was his name again, Ben?
Lawrence Gowan.
My God.
Canadian.
A little more flamboyant if it's possible, but yes.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as what he does in delivering as an entertainer, holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked.
Yeah. Yeah, Charles wasn't aware because he's not an actual Canuck, so he's not aware of Lawrence Gowan, aka Larry Gowan.
Didn't know.
Whereas the Canucks in the chat are like, he broke in 84, 85 with Strange Animal was his first hit. And then he had a few other, Pop. Definitely Pop. Wasn't a rock cat. Pop.
Well, he's filled Dennis DeYoung's shoes about as good as any human being ever could.
The Canucks are all piping in. Gowan has pipes. Yep.
He was remarkable, as well as getting to see the guys. You know, they brought Chuck Panozzo out. I think he's had a couple of strokes, but he actually came out for 3 or 4 of the end songs and participated. I remember him and his brother when they were young, back in the early '80s. I was fortunate to see all these bands multiple times. With West, I saw them. I got paid to see some of these bands. But the thing that I noticed the most, they sounded as good as they did then. And I'm not making a comparison like when I went to the stadium tour and I said, well, Motley Crue sounded this. No. These guys brought it, and I'm just like numb from it. I couldn't believe how good the show was. So I'm getting my rock back on, you guys. I'm actually getting to see a lot of shows. Me and Tony are going to be going to some shows on the channel.
In that venue that you're at, that outdoor venue where you can get the lawn chairs, and they're comfy lawn chairs. Yeah. It's not like you're sitting all upright lawn chairs.
No, they're very
things were back. I was like, oh, hell yes.
You can just sit
I don't
there.
know what they cost, but if it's double, I don't care. You know,
they've got the big screens now. So if you're lawn, I like to be up close. Personally, I like to be up kind of close, sit in a comfortable chair.
Yeah, can I have the best of both worlds? Can I be down front and in a chair?
Yeah. Well, you know, but when you're on the lawn, I'm getting old. You know, I can still do it. I stood all through Loverboy, and my daughter and I looked at each other, and one of my other daughters, Taylor, got food poisoning from Taco Bell just the day before the show. So she didn't go with her husband, but we were all sitting there, and she looked at me and she says, hey, let's get a couple of chairs. And I looked behind me, and literally, you know, a chair rental place. I went and rented a couple of chairs and sat down. It was wonderful under the stars. It was raining during Loverboy, ironically. In fact, when Loverboy came on, we were standing in a downpour watching Loverboy. I wouldn't leave to get dry for nothing, man. I was so impressed.
That's awesome.
So anyway, yeah, but I meant to talk about that earlier. I know you guys were about to sign off, but I thought I'd just...
All good. No, I don't think you drove all the way to Beckley for their Taco Bell, Doug, because that's where you had your incident, which ended up in the greater Charlotte area, where you had to touch down. But
there was a period of time where I lived on Taco Bell, and I was a single dad, and I
still love Taco Bell.
My kids way too much Taco Bell, and they literally had an intervention of sorts, and were like, Dad, look, we love you, but this Taco Bell business has got to stop. And so I had to switch it up, and, you know, hey, McDonald's. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. You know, anyway.
Well, folks, I will tomorrow night
Right there.
Duxwood Guitars. Tuesday night, well, if you're not already subscribed to the Down and Back Cornhole podcast starring Cousin Doug, you can catch Cousin Doug with me on Tuesday with NAS Canucks talking about racing from Michigan. Keith Campbell will be there. Charles 75N will be there. Guitar Man 45 will be there. It's amazing how many guitar players show up at a NASCAR podcast, just saying.
That sounds like all the usual suspects, man.
And if I get my laundry done, I'll be wearing the shirt that you sent me. Which
nice. Well, here's what we're looking for.
I called that, Charles, in that unboxing. Remember I said, Doug doesn't watch my channel, so he's going to be surprised. And sure enough, I wore it, and he was surprised. Nice. He's like, how? I didn't. I'm like, no, I got peeps. Don't worry about it.
We need to do this person to person. Me, you, and Tony will hook up when you come down here to Charlotte.
Definitely.
That will be wonderful, Ben. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, that'll be a party.
Tony cannot either. I'm looking forward to it. Man.
All right, folks, we will see you tomorrow. As always, hold those doors open. Let Doug's wife in ahead of you in traffic because, she's real. That's why. Be good to each other. Be well. Happy tone chasing. And, of course, don't litter.